Hey y'all, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan, and on this channel we do all things spooky, but specifically this month we are doing nothing but reading stories that you guys send in to me. So with that being said, if you have any stories you'd like for me to read, please check out that description below and send them to that email, and there you will also find podcast episodes and my other social medias. So please go check that out. But without further ado, let's get right on into these stories. My name is Mandy, and I grew up in a spirited house. My parents still live there. This information we were given when we moved in almost 40 years ago was that the house originally belonged to an optometrist. The previous owners didn't take very good care of the house, so we had lots of renovations to do. Previous owners told us that my bedroom was the waiting room and my closet was the doctor's exam room. He had a young son, not sure of the age, who passed in a sledding accident at a nearby dam. The doctor could not take being there anymore and sold the house and left the area. The previous owners did not inform us of the unusual activity inside that house. We didn't really notice all the strange sounds at first, but when we did start to notice it, Mom and Dad would just explain it away as the house being old. It has wooden floors, it has multiple floors versus being on a concrete slab as it was in the previous house, old windows, etc. The basement never flooded but had an open hole for the pump, which was always full of water. I later found out that setups like this tend to draw or attract spiritual energy. I spent most of my adolescence down in that basement, either exercising, playing Super Mario Brothers, or practicing clogging. The incident that finally forced my mother to admit that something else might be living in that house with us is the one I'm about to describe. I was in my basement bedroom with clogging shoes on and Rocky Top cued on my boombox. It was a cassette tape that was paused. Mom asked me to come up and help her with something, so I just took off my shoes and walked upstairs. Well, before Mom could say anything to me, Rocky Top starts playing on the boombox. We both raced downstairs to see the gears turning and the cassette and hear music playing. It was so eerie. It's as if somebody had waited for me to leave so they could start the music, or he wanted me to come back down and dance. I have more stories, I just have to get that part of my brain working again. If you do use my story, feel free to summarize or paraphrase, whatever you need to do. Also, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I forgot about this part of my childhood. Thank you. It was so hard for me to not just start singing Rocky Top, so that was fun. Yeah, that's terrifying. It seemed like it wanted you to come back down. I think that's what happened. Alright, next story. I have many stories I could tell you, but I'm just going to tell a couple of short, recent happenings. For some background, from a young age, I've had a very weird thing with always having weird paranormal activities happen around me or to me. Exactly a year ago, last January, I moved in with my sister into her apartment because I turned 18 and was kicked out. She didn't have a room for me, so I slept in the living room on a twin bed. One morning I had sleep paralysis. I get it often, but I woke up from the sleep paralysis with the foggy mind and low eyes. I looked up at my sister's door, which was not even 4 feet from where I slept, and saw what I thought was my sister. My sister had long black hair, so I naturally assumed of course it was her. Wearing all black, but just from the back. Not thinking too much of it, as she walked into my sister's room, I fell back asleep. When I woke up a couple of hours later, I asked my sister why she got up earlier and went back to sleep. She looked at me with so much confusion, and I said, "You were wearing black and went to the kitchen or something, right?" And she looked at me and said, "No, I slept in my red hoodie. I'm still wearing it." I literally just woke up. Immediately, I felt so uneasy. Of course, I staged the freaking apartment and tried to forget what happened. Well, months later, we moved into a different building in the same complex. At this point, I have a room that I share with her stepdaughter. The stepdaughter wasn't there this weekend, so I was alone. I get sleep paralysis again, and it was strange again this time. I woke up, and I know for a fact I wasn't still dreaming. I never fall back asleep. But I wake up because in my sleep paralysis-induced dream, I felt consumed by this black fog of energy that made me gasp awake because I felt suffocated. As I opened my eyes, I kid you not, I physically, with my eyes, watched as a black figure or orb left from me and flew out of the room and out of the door. I shot up so fast and looked around, making sure I saw what I saw. I was so shaken, but weirdly felt like a darkness had actually physically left me in that moment. I had just at that time began to really get into my spirituality and doing protection spells and things, so maybe that's why, but ever since then I haven't had such a dark experience. Thank you for taking the time to read my story, and I hope you find this in the piles of submissions. So much love and support, and stay safe, and so much love your way. That is terrifying. The way you described, like, it was almost a feeling of relief when it left. Oof. It's just, I wonder if it's two different experiences though, but I know like it was wearing all black, so maybe not. I don't know why I feel like it was two separate entities, but I do. Does anyone else feel like that? It just feels like it was two separate occurrences. You know what I mean? Anyways, next story. I'm a paranormal investigator, and I've written and published a few small books about my paranormal experiences because I've had so many. I want to read them. I grew up in a haunted house in one of the most haunted cities in Florida, and that's where my story begins. Now I live in Appalachia, and I travel to various haunted places such as battlefields, old asylums, and things like that to investigate ghosts. So as you can imagine, I've had my fair share of experiences. Here are a couple. I apologize that these are so long, but I feel like the details are important. The first experience takes place in the house that I grew up in Florida. It was insanely haunted. Shadow people, poltergeist activity, disembodied voices, everything. But one of the craziest things involves the ghost of a little girl named Carly. When I was younger, I used to have very vivid reoccurring dreams that I would wake up in my bed and see a little girl in a red dress standing beside it. She would introduce herself as Carly and ask if I wanted to play with her. When I would get up to follow her, I would look back at the bed and see my body still sleeping. She would lead me to the crawl space on the side of the house and tell me to go inside. I would refuse because I'd be overcome with a very bad feeling. She would then scream and start crying, very shiny tears, and I would wake up terrified. Years later, when I was in high school, I moved with my parents and little brother a few hours away from my dad's work. It was a temporary move and we would come back within a year, so my older brother and his wife moved into the house that I grew up in while we were gone. They didn't know about my dreams about Carly, but they did know that that house was haunted. Well, one day, my brother's wife texted me saying, "Hey, you said your house was haunted, right?" I say, "Yeah," and asked why she was asking. She told me that she had recently had a dream about a little ghost girl named Carly who was standing by her bed asking to play. When she refused, Carly screamed so loud that she woke up terrified. She also looked back at the bed when she was dreaming and saw her own sleeping body. After that, I knew 100% that Carly had not just been a dream, even though deep down part of me had always known that. Here's another story, but this time it's from when I moved to Appalachia. A few years ago, I was driving to work early in the morning and I had to pass through a rural wooden area with these trees arching over the road at one point. Since it was so early, I was the only car on the road. Well, suddenly out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something huge coming toward the car in my rear view. I thought that another car had somehow suddenly appeared. It was a long stretch of road with no side roads, so that wouldn't have been possible, really. And I genuinely thought I was about to be rear-ended. But when I looked again, nothing was there. Then I looked up in the trees that were bent over the road, and I saw genuinely the weirdest thing I have ever seen. It was the outline of what looked like a person, except clear. It's really hard to explain. The weirdest part is that it literally looked like it was swinging on the treetops by the arms like a monkey. I know that sounds insane, but it's what I saw. Immediately, I was filled with a sense of dread and terror, like I was being chased and hunted. I wanted to floor so badly, but I remember that if you see it, no you didn't rule. So I stayed calm, pretended I didn't see anything, and finally made it to work. For a while, I genuinely thought there was a chance that I wouldn't make it. I was so scared. Nothing else happened that day, except my oven did turn on by itself when I got home, but that could have just been one of my house ghosts, which I can tell you about in another email in the future if you would like. Yes. I hope you enjoyed hearing my experiences. I relate to you so much in the sense that I've had too many experiences to count. This stuff is kind of just drawn to me. I always used to say I could write a book about how many experiences I've had, and now here I am with 2, currently working on a 3rd one. You should totally write a book about yours, by the way. I'd absolutely read it. Either way, keep it up with your channel. Love your videos. You're ahead of me. You got me. I have never heard the things in the woods of Appalachia being described as clear, but it makes sense that they could be. And, like, that's kind of the ultimate disguise to blend in if you're going to present as clear. That's terrifying. But no, Carly in the first house also appearing to someone else, I would have felt so validated in the worst way. Like, I didn't need to know that information, you know? I would have been like, why are you telling me that? Like, that's terrifying. Alright, next story. I have a few long stories of the house that I grew up in with different parts that make up the whole. I might have to send this in 2 or 3 parts. Sorry in advance. It starts with my mother not liking the feel of the land that she and my dad built my childhood home on. She's super sensitive to energy and it always felt off to her. When I was born, things were still weird with the land, just worse. The worst place was around the house where the bedroom was that was supposed to be mine as a child, and the backyard. Other locations were weird too, but again, those might be in part 2 or 3. Well, one night when I was either 7 or 8, I finally decided to try and be a big kid and sleep in the room that I was supposed to be. I had slept in my parents' room until then because I was a nervous child. My parents tucked me into bed and left the room. It was dark because I didn't have a nightlight yet, but I looked over at the closet door after feeling like I was being stared at. Through, yes, you heard that right, through the closet door was a figure, leaning into the room with glowing red eyes and pointed ears, like think of Nosferatu, and intensely dark against the darkness already in the room. I bolt from my bed and ran into my parents' room, screaming about a vampire in the closet wanting to hurt me. I slept in my parents' room until I moved into the guest room where I was a teen. My mom later told me that she would always see a spider in a web when I talked about that incident. Out in the backyard, there was always this feeling of being watched through the kitchen window or the sliding glass door. My mom and I discussed it later, and we both think that we were seeing the same thing, but in a different way. She would see a black wolf with red eyes, and I would see a red wolf with black ones. It would pace the door, always unable to enter, but it would stalk us around the backyard at night, especially when we had to go outside to get our dogs to come inside. Please let me know if you'd like more stories, maybe 1 or 2 more parts. Yes, it does sound like you guys were seeing the same thing. But the thing you saw in your closet, I know there's a correlation with the spider. I just don't know what it is. And I want to know. I feel like I need to do like a ton of research now because there has to be some sort of correlation. Was the spider like watching over you to make sure it didn't come back? Was it the spider in a different form? I don't know, but I want to know. All right, next story. I have to give you and your audience, should you choose to read this on your channel, a trigger warning, as this involves the passing of a real child. I'm going to leave some personal details out for my family's privacy. If this bothers you, totally understand. Just go right past it, go to the next video because I have more to watch. Don't watch this and upset yourself. Some important background before I get into my dream. The dream that I had was about my niece, and I was very close to her since she was born. I nannied her when she was 6 months old until she was 10 months old. I took care of her during the day and took a class online, an independent study course, and took a class on campus in the evening. I was already planning on transferring to university out of state within a year. This is important. When she was 10 months old, she was diagnosed with a rare form of childhood cancer. To keep a very long story short, when I was taking care of her, she was displaying being sick without any symptoms, if that makes sense. Like a typical cold, but she wasn't getting any better. For the sake of anonymity, I won't say how her tumor was found, but it was almost divine intervention the way it was found. Soon after, she was rushed off to a children's hospital, where a few days later it was determined that the tumor was cancerous. Not just that, it was already stage 4, and it was spreading. She was close to death had that divine intervention not happened. I won't lie, my mental health tanked, and if she would have passed then, so would I. It was hard to not feel those feelings, and my world was crumbling around me. Nothing like that had ever happened to my family, and I didn't feel like I had the support from my parents that I needed at the time. The worst I experienced was a grandparent passing, which is sad, but to be expected. This had happened in the month of May, and I planned on transferring out of school on the other side of the country in the coming year. It felt wrong to leave, so I postponed school until January. I wish I could say that I spent that time with my niece, but the reality is she was in the hospital or in isolation most of the time, getting chemo or radiation. It was so long ago I can't remember exactly what went on. Well, around Christmas time, she was well enough to be out of the hospital and cautiously be around people. After the holidays, I'm about to move across the country for school, and I'm visiting them where she's staying, which is close to the hospital as they have to be nearby for treatment. I'm over the moon because I got to spend the whole day and evening with her, mother and niece playing with them and being silly like nothing had ever changed. The same month I moved away for school, we got the best news that my niece is in remission. An 8-month nightmare is finally over. Of course, she has to be monitored and screened in case those cancer cells come back. She has to be cancer-free for 8 years to be considered completely cancer-free. But also, we were told that if the cancer was to return, that she wouldn't make it. My niece is 1.5 years old when she goes into remission. I'm going to jump ahead to when she's 3.5 years old. As I've said, I went to school on the other side of the country. I'm in the United States. And at the time I was away at school, my family never bothered to bring me home for Thanksgiving since it was such a short visit and such a long flight for me. I didn't mind not coming home. This time, though, my grandmother insisted I come home. As soon as I get home, I was given the news that my niece's cancer had come back. They'd known it for months and didn't want to wait and tell me at Christmas. It was better to ruin Thanksgiving for me than it was to ruin Christmas. I still don't like Thanksgiving to this day. My heart sank and I don't remember much from that trip. It's now Christmas and I'm home. Every year I look forward to my family gathering, and this year was no different. I won't sugarcoat it, this was my niece's last Christmas. We gather with my aunt and uncle's house every year, and it's always so fun. The kids go off and play together and have a great time. It was actually one of the best Christmas gatherings we've ever had, to be honest. One of my cousins was taking photos throughout the night, and pretty much every single photo there were dozens of orbs. I'm not the type of person who jumps at orbs, but these photos, I mean, there were so many. Orbs of all sizes. I'll send you the photos if you want to see them. The orbs never happened again after that night. It was after Christmas that her condition got worse. I wasn't there to witness any of it, but I'll tell you, every time my phone rang, it was bad news. I started to develop a fear of my phone ringing. It was never anything good. I remember there being so many times that I cried all of the makeup off of my face. I don't know how I made it through school, but I did. All I wanted was to see her again if my highest power would allow it. End of the school year, I make it back home. My niece was still with us, thankfully. She wasn't able to walk, but she was in good spirits. It was early June when I saw her for the last time, and I didn't know it would be the last time I'd ever see her again. We had a wonderful day playing and hanging out. We watched SpongeBob, and I still remember the episode. We played with toys. She sat on my lap and painted my 2 paintings. They're now framed. And I let her paint my nails with paint. It was a wonderful day, and she told me she loved me, something she never said. I never saw her after that. She was granted a wish from Make-A-Wish soon after. But when they got home, she made a turn for the worse and had to be rushed to the hospital. She passed away shortly. She was 2 weeks shy of her 4th birthday. A year goes by, the day of my niece's 5th birthday, an odd incident happens. A little bird falls through the chimney at my parents' house. My dad sees it and asks me to pick up the little bird and take it outside. The bird's alive, albeit startled. I open my hands to let it fly away, and the bird perches itself on my finger for a moment, and it looks at me before flying away. I'm not going to give away what my niece's name was, but the meaning of her name was like a bird. I truly believe she sent that bird for me, and I was having such a difficult first year without her. Now onto the dream I need help with. 3 years after her death, I'm struggling. I'm still crying every day, and I don't know if you know what it's like to cry every day for 3 years, but it sucks. So in my dream, my niece is dressed the same as she was on her last Christmas at our family gathering. She's nonchalantly walking around, but the back of her head is bloody. It didn't seem to bother her, nor did she seem to notice it, but the moment she turned around, I saw the back of her head. I immediately woke up, like I shoot straight up in the bed and gasp. There have only been a few other dreams that I know that were visits. I remember one dream visit that it's just me holding her, and another where I hold her hand and we walk. But that dream, there was something else. What do you make of it? I apologize for the length of this, but the background was important. So I'm not the best at interpreting dreams. Do you have any idea?
No, I'm not really good at interpreting dreams either.
That sounds like maybe internalized grief. I don't know if the dream itself had a message. Did you say where the tumor was? Was it like in her head? I can't remember if you said that or not. But if it was, maybe that was a manifestation. Or maybe it could have just been like, that was like a manifestation of the tumor wherever it was. I have no idea. Maybe someone in the comments will be able to figure it out. That one has me stumped, because that doesn't feel like a visitation dream. That feels like something else. Maybe your brain trying to process things. I don't know. I have no idea. Hopefully someone in the comments will, though. That was a very sad story. Alright, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for everyone who sent me in your stories. Please comment below some help on that dream, because I am literally stumped and I really want to help this person. That is all for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time.